That's a very strong statement. I'm sure we've all had bosses that we would go to the end of the earth with. But on the flip side, we've had bosses that we could not wait to get away. A situation happened to me maybe a month ago. I got a call from my daughter who told me that she had just gotten a new job, huge raise, huge title, and there was a pause. And she said, next, I really don't want to leave. I don't want to leave this job. I like this job. I like the company. I like the work I do. But this boss is out of control, mistreats everybody. Everybody that I know here has their paper out on the street. I'm one of the first ones to leave, but everybody's looking to leave. So when you talk about people leaving companies, they leave companies because of managers. And in a lot of cases, you really should not blame the manager because they were promoted for reasons based on possibly skill set, politics, for a whole host of reasons. But the new filter says, look for managers who are collaborators, look for managers who knows how to build a team, look for a manager who knows how to make the connectivity between manager and employee. That should be the strongest filter going forward. In other words, look for soft skills as opposed to what we've been doing in the past is looking for hard skills. The salesperson becomes the sales manager. The marketing person becomes the marketing manager, and it just goes on and on. Employee engagement is the connection between the employee, the manager, the department or team, and the organization. The stronger that connection is, the more engaged that worker is. Expand that across thousands of employees, you've got the same thing. So that's just why it's important, because every financial indicator shows on companies that reach that top tier of engagement, they outperform all of their peers. So there's a financial incentive to try and get that right. So as you think about that in the Middle East, the vast majority of our workforce are expats. And they've come over for a whole host of reasons. And lots of times we will say, we being managers of companies will say it's because of the financial package and those type of incentives. But there are other companies that are your competitors that can offer the same financial package. So the only thing that you're going to have to bind or make that relationship stronger is the engagement level between that particular employee, the department, team, manager, and organization. That's going to be the key piece that's going to drive it going forward. When I say drive it to success, drive it to innovative excellence, all those type of things. Employee engagement is linked to employee performance in a whole host of ways. Google did a project, and they found that high-performing managers were managers that were highly engaged with their people. Managers that scored very, very low, they had low engagement levels in their department. So it's all kind of tied together, kind of a catch-22. You get a high-performing team, you have a high-performing manager. You have a manager that's probably average to subpar on a performance level. The vast majority of time, you're going to find the production level of that department or team is lower compared to high performers. The role that a manager plays is extremely important. Gallup did a survey that was called it says the state of the American manager, but that could be scaled across the world. And basically what it said, that 70% of the variance of employee engagement scores is dependent upon the manager and employee connection. So that's the key piece. But what will happen is that when companies get employee engagement surveys back, They look to start, well, maybe we can start offering ice cream on Thursday afternoons. Or I was interviewed on TV, and the gentleman asked me, he said, well, I heard that if you were to put in a gym, employee engagement levels would go up. And I said, that would be great if I am into going to gyms, but if I'm not into gyms, it means nothing to me. So they look for all these other type things to try and boost this level, as opposed to trying to get those managers developed throughout the organization, having them understand exactly what engagement is about, the role they play in the whole engagement scheme. It's not just the organization that comes back and our scores were very low. Well, that comes back down to every manager. I've always told companies that if you're going to go through an employee engagement survey, break it down to a degree that you can break it down by departments, you can break it down by managers. This way, all the symptoms are going to pop out and you can surgically go in and see where your misconnections are. And the vast majority of the time, the misconnections come from bad managers that are out of control. Through no fault of their own lots of times, because they've never been trained as to the importance of engagement. That was the first time, by the way, that culture and engagement has ever come to the top. In past years, it was 3, 4, 5. But it goes to show you the new dynamic that organizations are working within. I spoke earlier about companies trying to come up with quick fixes. They'll say, well, we can do this on this day. Let's have a get together. Let's have a picnic and all these kinds of things. All those things are temporary boosts. But if you're talking about long-term engagement, number one, the managers have to understand what those scores are, what those scores mean, and the relationship that they play in trying to increase engagement levels. That's ground zero. It has to start from there. The other piece that starts from the C-level. The CEO and his team, or her team, has to understand engagement from an organizational perspective, not just the score. Okay, we've got to do better, guys. HR will work on it and get us back to where we need to be. No, it's you living the example. You set an example. To give you an example, I had a meeting with a CEO who was going on and on about how connected his organization was, how engaged his organization was, how engaged he was to his people. I mean, I almost wanted to pull out a violin and play because he was just going on and on. But I noticed the HR person that was sitting in the corner had this look on her face that was basically telling me it's not like that here. So as the meeting was over, she walked me to my car and she said, this is the same person who will come in the morning, walk through the hallway, all the workers are on each side, doesn't even give the most basic pleasantry of good morning. Goes into his office, closes the door, and you see him when he comes out to the restroom or he needs to see somebody, he comes back in and closes his door. And this is what I'm talking about, walking the walk. If you're talking about engagement, you have to live, eat, breathe, and sleep that every time you walk out of the door, every time you come in the door. So it's important for managers to understand it. It's important for CEOs to understand it. The other key component to that is the hiring process. Now, that's important because let's say we work for a year's time to really get this right, and we understand our culture. We put our managers through training. We put our senior level through a shortened version of engagement development and the importance of it. So we've got our model. We know what success looks like for employees here. That has to be pushed down to the hiring process to make sure that you've developed a filter. So as you interview people to come into your organization, you're not just focusing again on hard skills and not the soft skills piece. So you want to align what your findings are to the hiring process. Put your recruiters through this process to know this is the individual, this is the type of individual we're looking for. we're looking for an individual that is very strong on soft skills. But we know we hire for technical skills, but the onus is to try and get a stronger match on the soft skill side. So if I've got 3 candidates, 2 are great hard skills, the third person is great or average, but the skills are there for collaboration, for teamwork, all these kinds of things. And once you do that, you basically build kind of a cocoon around your organization that you can maintain that. Because if you don't, and you still hire the same way you've been hiring, you're going to get those bad seeds in that's going to start what they've always started and drag the team, department, or the organization down. Project Option is a perfect example. They were trying to figure out what makes a manager great. And that's how this whole thing started. And their analytics team took a look at all the performance reviews over a period of time. And they clustered them on, I think, a 9-box, 4-box, whatever it was. And they found that high-performing managers had high-performing teams, highly engaged, and the others did not. So as a result of that, they built a model around the success profile of the high-performing managers, and that was what they tried to use to bring the other managers to that level. In other words, develop them along those lines. Another company is called Zappos, which is kind of way out there as it relates to the things they're trying to do. But one of the things that's unique with them is that as they go through the hiring process, at the end of that probation, the employee is offered the opportunity to leave, and we'll write you a check for $3,000 to $5,000 to leave if you feel that this culture is not for you. That goes back to the hiring process I was talking about. And as I read through this, I could hear people saying, "Oh my God, they're just giving away money." No. And what he said to that complaint was that you're just writing a check and you're giving it away. He says, "I prefer to pay $4,000 to $5,000 now, as opposed to have this person come in here and infiltrate this entire organization and pull the people around them down. So by me paying this money up front, I'm done with it, and it's a cost savings, because over a period of time, it would be the best investment I ever made." One of the other pieces that they use is that because they're located in Las Vegas and they've got to have someone pick them up in the airport, the driver that picks them up is a part of the hiring process. Now that's kind of unique, because what happens is that they want to find out, how were you treated by this individual that you brought in? So that driver has a say in feedback. Because I may come in and I'm coming in to be interviewed for executive vice president. I'm one of the so-called big shots. And this person is trying to be nice to me, but I'm rude to them because you are way below me and I'm not even having a discussion with you. That goes back into play. The other piece is that once they're hired, everyone has to sit in the customer service order taking section for a period of time. And they've said that a lot of star players were let go or not considered because they figured that they were beneath that. I'm an executive vice president here, and I should not be sitting and taking orders over a phone and listening to complaints because I'm a big shot. And they said no. So those are some examples that companies are using. But there's so many. One of the things I've noticed is the fact that younger CEOs are not bound by policies and procedures that were created as a result of the industrial age, because the vast majority of workforce policies come from that era. But if you look at the Googles, the Facebooks, and all these kinds of things, you'll notice that all of their CEOs are younger, and they're willing to try anything. The other company that I admire and is doing some very unique things is Virgin. Richard Branson is just an amazing person to read about. I mean, just last year, he said, I want my employees to engage with their newborns for a year. Now, the average company, when you go out on maternity leave, you've got 12 weeks, whatever it is. He says, you take a year, husband and wife, and both are employed there. Again, living, eating, and breathing your organization, because you're setting the example at the C-level. So when a CEO comes out and says, it's important for my employees to bond with their newborn baby, everyone gets a year off. That sends a signal throughout the organization. If I'm never planning on having kids, I know I landed at the right organization. That gives them a competitive advantage, because people that work at other airlines will say, my God, look at the way they're treating their people. Maybe this is the spot for me, because I'm sure not getting that over here. So those are some examples that this phrase is called out-of-the-box thinking, and that's what's being done. I think it's the senior leadership, because a lot of companies, the CEO says, well, we're going to do an employee engagement survey. Yeah, these are the scores. Okay, great. And it goes back to whatever they're doing. They're not really connecting to that piece in their executive meetings. Are they discussing engagement? Are they discussing ways that they could get their teams to become more engaged? Is that part of the monthly get-together for all the senior teams? Because the vast majority of the time it's not. It's business. And this is the HR piece, because HR wants to do this and do that. But it has to start from the top. If you look at all those organizations, you have visionary CEOs who are looking to try. They realize that the greatest competitive advantage you can have is your people. I gave a presentation at the Union of Arab Banks HR Forum last year in Istanbul. So in researching this topic that I was going to talk about as related to banking, I came across an interesting quote that said that there's no technology app or new feature that you can add on your website that's going to give you a competitive advantage, because the same way that you came up with it, some other company can come up with a better app or better interface or whatever it is. The only competitive advantage that banks have are their people. And if you were to take a look at a bank and all of the branches, you will see some branches that are outperforming all the other branches. Customer service, sales, all these kinds of things. But they all went through the same hiring process to find people. But what you'll find, and what they found at Project Oxygen, was that the leader of that branch is an engaged manager. And that engaged manager will make it happen. And that engaged manager, it works in an environment that people want to make it happen. Whereas the branches that don't perform, the vast majority of the time, it's the manager's level who is indifferent, who's not connected, who my way or the highway, I don't want to be bothered, all these kinds of things. So those are the kind of things that companies are trying to figure out, but it all comes back to, you've got to have managers in place that understand engagement. You've got to have C-level people that understand engagement and want to do whatever they can possibly do, all that they can possibly do to make sure it happens. This level of training that we've developed is for intermediate level to beginning level managers. In other words, we're starting them out on the process of understanding what engagement is about. The vast majority of workers in an organization are managed down below, because you've got a select few at the executive level, then you've got the directors, and then you've got managers, supervisors. But the vast majority of workers fall into that strata. So if we can work through them so that they understand the importance of engagement and understand that they are the linchpins in making sure that their organization is engaged, giving them the tools that they can take back to their organization and build dynamic teams, build dynamic departments. That's going to be the key, because it starts with that 70%, which Gallup said controls all of the variances of the entire score that an organization will get. The managers control that. Now, there was another stat that showed that 20 to 30% of a company's profitability is based on leadership and being connected to